Here we are again, Jesuit Lunch Hour, as always, powered by beajesuit.org. I am Father Michael Rossman, and this week I am joined by Mr. Alex Hale, SJ, no longer NSJ. Welcome, Alex, to Jesuit Lunch Hour.
Thank you for having me, Father Rossman. It's great to be here.
Great. And can you say a little bit about why I said no longer NSJ, currently SJ?
So I am one of the guys who had the pleasure of taking vows very, very recently. So for the past 2 years, I was a novice in St. Paul, Minnesota, and now I am a scholastic. So that means I'm studying to be a priest here at Loyola University in Chicago.
Great. And because Jesuits always have to be a little different, we don't use the term seminarian, we use the term scholastic. So great, Alex. It's wonderful to have you, especially now that you are so recently vowed as a Jesuit. Perhaps just as a way of beginning, you could share a bit about your background.
Absolutely. So I grew up about 30 minutes west of Detroit, and I met the Jesuits at the Jesuit High School in the city of Detroit, which is named U of D High, and I love my time there. I love the Jesuits I met there, and through that experience, I think I just grew to continue to want to be Jesuit educated. I went to Xavier University in Cincinnati after that for four more years. Where I studied in a unique program there called Philosophy, Politics, and the Public, sort of an interdisciplinary political philosophical program, which was very, very fun. During that time, I worked in local politics while still receiving my undergrad, and then I entered the novitiate once I graduated. So that's a little bit about where I'm coming from.
Great. So you met the Jesuits pretty early and continued with them for some time before then actually joining us. What was it about the Jesuits that was particularly attractive?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky. I had a regent. A regent in formation is a little bit further along than I am now. It's an assignment for 3 years for someone in formation to go and do some apostolic work. And so a regent, who I believe is a friend of yours, Father Cyril Pinchak, was my cross country coach. And so we would go out and run cross country as a team together. And he was around all the time and was able to just be an open ear for a lot of different things. And so I'd be able to talk with him, and he was just always willing to listen, always there to care for me and love me. So I think his ministry to me in that way, and the others on the team, just made me sort of want to follow his example and see why he was just so joyful in this life. And so I think that was definitely the first stepping point towards me growing to love the Jesuits and wanting to pursue this life.
Fantastic. Yeah, you had a good model there. Definitely, Cyril is one of my dear friends. So you then studied philosophy, politics, and the public. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
All right. Now, and then you worked in local politics. This is quite an interesting time. Yeah, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about our current moment, perhaps, but then maybe more fundamentally, we could talk about our stance toward politics, and maybe we could do this. Hopefully, we could do this in a way that doesn't make us want to curl up into a ball of depression and so forth. So I guess first of all, what got you interested in politics, and if someone were to ask you, is there any hope? What would you say?
Yeah, so I think I first started getting interested in politics early on in high school. There were some other really incredible teachers at U of D High who were very, very concerned about social justice, particularly caring for the poor and things like that. And so I was moved by their example for me, and I always wanted to go forward and sort of help people's lives in the long run. I think naturally for a lot of young politicos my age, the West Wing played a role as well. So the TV show West Wing, was one I watched pretty deeply, and it just sort of explores what government's like. I feel like it's the best government class there is out there, regardless of the opinions expressed in it. And so I started moving in that direction from that period of time. I worked primarily in local politics, so this isn't our federal level stuff. We are living in a very interesting world right now that's incredibly polarized. So we're not necessarily talking to people who we're disagreeing with, and I think that's left us in a pretty difficult spot. But I don't think it's impossible to get out of that. If there's anything I realized from my time knocking doors, I probably knocked over 5,000 doors in the city of Cincinnati. If there's anything I learned from that, it's that people really have a lot of the same concerns. They're concerned about their kids' education. They're concerned about putting food on the table. Concerned about all these different things that regardless of your background, we can sort of come together on acknowledging that these things are worrisome and bothersome to us, and we want to provide the best for those around us. So, although we seem very, very polarized right now, I think there is a lot more that unites us than we'd like to think. Despite all the dialogue in our national scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's very easy to get a pretty negative view of the state of our country or the other side, whatever that might be, or one's own side for that matter. But I think, as you're saying, if you lean in, if you get up close, you see that most people are decent, and most of us share many of the same concerns. What were some of the things that you were trying to work on when you were a student and in politics and so forth?
Yeah, so I had sort of a number of different roles in that. So sort of as a student at Xavier, I ended up running for student government for the student body president, and so primarily ran on a campaign of the Jesuit heritage at the school in terms of revitalizing that and focusing in on that heritage. So that was sort of a unique thing to Xavier, and that was just kind of fun. It was nice to run for office on my own, even if it is a smaller thing. But in the actual government of Cincinnati, I had a lot of different roles. So one, I worked for a city council member there as a legislative aide, and so I would help with a lot of different things, from constituent issues. So the garbage company isn't picking up their trash. So how do we help them with that in terms of making sure that the utilities can get to them? But then working on legislation as well. So one thing we passed, which was really, really great, was this initiative called Golden Cincinnati, which was to help seniors age better in place. So that would involve initiatives that I think are still in the works, but there's one part of it that would be like 2 buttons on a sidewalk crossing. One is the normal speed thing. Another would be a little bit longer for those who need a little bit extra time. There'd be tax credits for those to be able to age in place and whatnot. So things like that, which are very rewarding, because I think we all can get on board that we want to take care of those growing older in our communities. So I love that sort of stuff on the legislative level. I think that was really, really where my heart was. I was also on the campaign trail as well. So I worked as a canvasser, which is what we call sort of a door knocker in politics. Go up to all these doors. And then I got to be a campaign manager for a state representative and a state senator. And those were really, really rewarding experiences, because the way that we go about knocking on doors through these things, and I think that this is probably just a good thing when a good word of advice for talking about politics with people. We would never really go up and say, here's my candidate and here's what they support and you should vote for them because of this. Instead, we would say, what issues concern you? What matters to you? What should we know about as we're running for this office, as we're trying to make our world better? And that allows people to sort of, examine themselves and tell, their representatives, tell their senators what can be worked on to actually make their lives better. And I think that's another thing we've lost in politics is this idea that it can make people's lives better. And so I enjoyed those experiences. And yet, when you ask about those things too, you get into a very difficult space sometimes. I remember there's one person who I knocked on her door, and her daughter had died from a heroin overdose.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, I was just a young college kid, and I'm standing there trying to now grieve with this mother, and wondering what to do and what to say about it. But just to sort of be there and show concern in some way, even as a political operative, I think was very important for me to experience, and I think leads further into why I want to do this Jesuit life too. I don't necessarily need to have this direct bent like knocking door to door, but I want to be there for people in their struggles, which I think is an important part of this life, spiritual direction, spiritual conversation as well. So there's some connected things there as well.
Yeah. So what did lead you from this more political route to taking perhaps not a total 180, because it seems as if there are some similarities that you're already describing, but what ultimately led you to the Jesuits rather than just politics?
Yeah, so this even when I was working in politics, this was sort of on the, I don't want to say the back burner for me, but it was always there. It was always something that I was pursuing, and I think it comes from the Kairos retreat, which is a wonderful retreat that a lot of our high schools use, and a lot of our universities use something similar to it as well. And I really love that retreat. It's a retreat really just about showing people God's love, and I had the unique pleasure of leading that retreat and starting those conversations that I was talking about, those spiritual conversations with people who were struggling. And I just realized that I want to be there for people in these moments, in these difficult moments. I want to show them that they're loved, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of what they've been through, and that God has this incredible love that's beyond any of our understanding. And I found that was something that brought me to God in the first place, and I really wanted to show that to the rest of the world. So that was sort of how it began, and it continued to develop. Always with this sort of the social justice part doesn't leave just because I'm now a Jesuit. It's still there, and I still hope to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. But it's different now. It's more about walking with people. And I think that's how I view this life best, and how I view my relationship with God as well. It's about friendship, it's about companionship, walking with people along the way.
Right. Yeah, and it seems as if there could be some transferable skills that you picked up, from canvassing and so forth, that you might integrate in some way in your life as a Jesuit. Honestly, when you were talking about knocking on doors, that probably initially, I can't help but think that that could have been somewhat intimidating, but maybe after a while, it becomes second nature. And I wonder, how some of those experiences might translate to the work of evangelization or other things you might do as a Jesuit. Any thoughts around those themes?
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately it never becomes not intimidating. And naturally there are some rough experiences out there.
Sure.
People are not always pleased to see someone coming up to their door to talk about politics, and so through those experiences, I think you learn rejection. You learn to sort of be humble and just sort of walk away when someone's not ready to have a conversation like that. And so I'm not sure exactly how well that connects to evangelization, but I think there's something to be said about it too. We're supposed to preach the gospel in all that we do. And so if we're to do that, sometimes it's not going to come on ears that are ready to hear it. And so I think it's important to always just remember, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know. Yeah, you just don't know what someone's dealing with, and what you mean to them when you're talking to them. So maybe that's a good way to connect it. Yeah.
But even as you talk about, not knowing where someone is, I at least see some similarities in my life as a priest. I've been ordained just 3 years, but one of the things that I have grown to expect is the unexpected. Just not knowing what the story is of someone who might go to confession with you, or just seek your counsel in some way. So, perhaps you have already picked up some of those skills that will prove to be quite valuable in the present and certainly in the future. Maybe as a way of winding down, so Jesuit Lunch Hour is powered by beajesuit.org. I'd like to ask guys, what piece of advice would you give to someone in discernment? So maybe that is someone thinking about the Jesuits. Maybe it's someone thinking about a life in politics, or maybe it's someone needing to make a decision of some sort in his or her life. What's a little nugget of wisdom you might offer?
Yeah, I'm always reminded of this quote that another great Jesuit, Father Eric Sundrup, who's now the pastor at Bellarmine Chapel in Cincinnati, he had me pray over this quote from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, which is just wonderful, and I think it's the best advice I could have had in discernment. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that His hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think that says a lot. We're not gonna feel like we've come to the answer at the end of the day when we make that decision. There's always gonna be a little bit of gray area. Sometimes it might feel clearer than other times, but we're not gonna have that crystal clear line of I just made the right call. And so just be okay with that tension and continue to work with it and sit with it and see if this is where God is leading you, and trust that His hand is leading you. So that's the advice I'd give.
Sounds great. Sage advice for all of us who inevitably, at least on some level, are in suspense and incomplete. So Alex, what a great pleasure to talk with you. All the best in your continued transition to this period of first studies as part of your Jesuit formation. This has been Jesuit Lunch Hour, powered by beajesuit.org. We will be back next week, I believe on Friday, with another great young Jesuit. Thanks so much, everyone, and God bless.